We're at that time of year, the shadow of July 4th yet extends upon us, and we are not yet to the academic year. Do you have any favorite activities in late July? For some, it's a swimming pool. For some, it is the basement with the air conditioner cranked, which will be probably the case this week. So it's hot. This is the doldrums season of the year. It's also a good time of year to try to get a little extra rest if you can. It's a good time of year for some indoor reading or maybe early morning. It's a time of year where those summer book lists, where am I at on these? It's a good time of year to grab some. I'm always reading biography, try to read a constant biography. I find it encouraging. One of the most helpful spiritual disciplines I have is Sunday afternoons. I'm always reading biography. It almost never fails. This afternoon, it's C.S. Lewis. I'll be reading a bit of biography of him. I've read before, but now with the interns and book club helps to do that. Give me something to read. Helps me to rethink, get my eyes forward again after a full Sunday morning. And I have different kinds of biography. Some Christians like Lewis or pastors of the past. I have a few that are on my list now after the UK tour. I want to read the biography of Andrew Fuller, who supported William Carey, and others more about Spurgeon. Seems like biographies about Spurgeon are coming out fairly often, and always good to follow Charles Spurgeon and get some encouragement from him as well. I like political biography, presidential biography. Do you have a favorite? Especially this year, 250th anniversary of our country, many are reading books about our country. Maybe you are. And, presidential biography. Yesterday, I was reading the newspaper, and there was a profile of several books about Teddy Roosevelt. What an incredible figure, president, and various military engagements and explorations he went on. Listed 6 biographies that you could read about Teddy, focusing on various phases of life. My wife has read some of those, so we dialogue about them sometimes. And what an incredible figure that he was. One of the most enduring features of Roosevelt's legacy, a national park system. If you've been to a national park, you appreciate that, an outdoorsman. Nature functioned in Teddy Roosevelt's life in a therapeutic kind of way. Teddy Roosevelt lost his mother, who he was close to, and his wife on the same day. They both died in his home. His mother of an illness, his wife after giving birth. And Roosevelt, after that, found nature as a healing force. He left the East Coast, went to North Dakota, and lived on a ranch in North Dakota for a time and found nature, the outdoors, the rugged life. As a basis of healing. But that sort of happy vignette only goes so far for we who are believers. Roosevelt was a thoroughgoing Darwinian, evolutionist. The great ideas of Charles Darwin that seemed to synthesize the scientific findings of the day, natural selection, survival of the fittest. Roosevelt would not be the last politician who found vigor in those ideas and saw nature as a healer or as a helper. As we look at Isaiah 40 today, we're going to be thinking about nature quite a bit. I think about the natural world and terms for the natural world. Your life is likely influenced by the phrase big data. Is that part of your world? Some of you are in analytics. Let's do some big data on Isaiah 40. Would you join me there? Isaiah chapter 40. Let's do some big data on Isaiah chapter 40. And this will help us to think about Isaiah's statements regarding nature and God. Not nature in terms of natural selection, survival of the fittest, Darwin's observations, but nature as God's exhibit, as if God calls nature to testify in court. And then God calls us to trust Him because of that. So let's begin with words and big data. If we were to take Isaiah chapter 40, beginning at verse 12, going through verse 31, if we were to take all the words and put them into various buckets, 2 buckets would dominate. One of those are words for the natural world, whether nouns or verbs, in some kind of a combination. Those words taken together, different types of words, but also their frequency, altogether, something like 34 different uses. Could be the same word used multiple times, but 34 different uses of words about nature. That's a big bucket. The other large bucket would be terms of theology or reference to God, about 40. Some act of God or reference to God. That's what this chapter's about from verses 12 onward. 2 big buckets. Nature, God. But if we're doing big data, let's not just stop at words. Let's think about grammar and types of sentences. Just scan through, beginning in verse 12, down through the end of the chapter. Have you ever seen a chapter of the Bible with so many question marks? You see those? Look at all those question marks. What do questions do? Well, I think we're back in the courtroom, aren't we? We've got God calling as a witness in court the natural world. And He's a prosecuting attorney. That's what prosecuting attorneys do. They ask questions, lots of them. Where were you? What happened? When were you there? Why were you there? Who were you with? I want to get to motive. I want to get to opportunity. I want to get that knife in your hand. You did it. At this hinge point in the book of Isaiah, as DJ set up for you last week, the problems of chapter 39 are answered in chapter 40. All of the tension, the disappointment of chapter 39 is answered in chapter 40. In some ways, the previous 39 chapters here. To a people who, because of their own sin and generations of idolatry, God has weakened and raised the Assyrian nation as a great power to come against them, surrounding them. The Babylonians are on the rise after them, and Judah's in this weak place, the people of Jerusalem especially, in this weakened posture where they feel like they've been overlooked. The prophet comes with a word of hope. Comfort. Comfort ye my people. This is where Handel's Messiah begins, and it's where the gospel begins every time we hear it. To those in sin, God comes with a word of comfort. To those who recognize their rebellion, their idolatry, God comes with a word, I'm ready to forgive. Sometimes the consequences of our sin have effects on our lives. Sometimes God gets a bad rep. If I do something wrong, I'm punished right away. Do you realize God doesn't operate tit for tat all of the time? And if He did, who would exist? Would you be here? No. And this is God's grace. Sometimes there are consequences. Sometimes there are cumulative consequences. And that's how Judah feels. And God comes with a word. I know God is arguing here. I want you to realize that in the midst of your inability, your weakness, your sin, I'm coming and I'm calling the cosmos as a witness to my faithfulness, to my ability to deal with the consequences I brought on you. God has raised up these other nations to come against them, and here God answers that directly. The people are asking, if these other nations have come against us, we're so weak. God comes and says, I'm over those other nations. Here's the logic of the big data. Big data is all around our lives, but that's why you need data analytics. Right? A, big bucket, natural world, 34 terms. B, God, 40 terms. The grammar, lots of questions. All of this ends with the statement that God is not an idol. He's not a created thing. The nations have idols, created gods. God's not like that. He's over them. Therefore, He can be trusted. And He asks questions to stimulate thinking along the way. So, big data, 2 buckets, 15 question marks. All of this is going to come down to one key verse from 12 onward, and we'll stop there for just a moment to think about it. Some ideas as we conclude to help us walk out the door with this. Let's begin. What's the point of natural theology? Now, I'm not just talking about nature. I'm not just talking about the healing power of an ocean breeze or a mountain hike or a few months in the rugged North Dakota landscape, as good as all those could be. I'm talking about the God who created them, rules them, and the God who is near to you and to me. And God argues this out. God calls creation as a witness of his supremacy over international affairs. Let's begin there. Notice with me in the text. I want to notice with you how verses 12 through 26 fit together. Notice with me first verses 12 through 17. Verses 12 to 17. Creation displays God's wisdom. That's what God wants us to understand. Lots of questions here, 12 to 17. God is in the courtroom, and He's looking at the people of Judah. I want you to trust me, and I want you to see that the cosmos displays my wisdom. Notice verse 12. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of His hand, or marked off the heavens with the span of His hand? Who's gathered the dust of the earth in a measure, or weighed the mountains in a balance, and the hills in scales? Who's directed the Spirit of the Lord? Who gave Him His counsel? Who did He consult with? Who gave Him understanding, taught Him the paths of justice? Who taught Him knowledge and showed Him the way of understanding? Look, the nations are a drop in a bucket. They're considered as a speck of dust on the scales. He lifts up the islands like fine dust. Lebanon is not enough for fuel, or its animals enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They're considered by him as less than nothing, emptiness. Creation displays God's wisdom. This is God at court. I want you to look at the cosmos and see that all of this displays my wisdom because I made it, and who taught me this? This is God's argument. Creation displays his wisdom. That, I think, is a good way to label verses 12 through 17. We're going to come back to that label toward the end of this section. I think verses 25 to 26 have that same idea. Creation displays God's wisdom. 12 to 17, 25 to 26, about the same. And when you're reading the Bible and you have a set of ideas here and then a concluding set of ideas, we often think of those as bookends, an inclusio. Nice little fitting together, come full circle. That always brings us to ask, well, what's in the middle? If I've got this idea here, same idea at the end, they're going to help me understand what's in the middle. I think there are a couple of sections between verse 18, verse 24, that help us to put this together. The idea is not just that God is supreme over creation. It's that if he's creator, he can't be created. Pick up the text with me. Verse 18. Verses 18 through 20. God's not an idol. Who will you compare me with? What likeness will you compare to God? That idea of likeness assumes comparison. Again, here's A and here's B. They're going to be qualitative ideas that are overlapping. And this is where we think about the holiness of God. We think about the holiness of God as his distinctness, that there's none like him. We've thought about this before in Isaiah, haven't we? Isaiah chapter 6. What does Isaiah see in the heavenly vision in which he's called? Holy, holy, holy. Unique, unique, unique. Uncomparable, uncomparable, uncomparable. And at the essence of the concept of idolatry, you have comparison, because you have an item that is physically, objectively observable, representing something that can't be observed. And you're supposed to take that physical object and from that think about what's unseen. But what physical object, what physical created object could do justice to the Almighty? That's the point. Who you compare God with? What likeness will you compare to him? To an idol? Something that a smelter casts, verse 19? A metal worker plates with gold? That would work. Gold's a precious item. Let's put gold onto some object and that will show its value. But who created gold? Verse 20. To one who shapes a pedestal choosing wood that won't rot. He looks for a skilled craftsman to set up an idol that will never fall over. I want to build this to represent God. Everything created will eventually diminish. If we could do theology for just a moment, this is what makes the incarnation stand out in the Christian religion versus other religions. Because God, uncreated, took up flesh. The eternal Son, begotten, not created, took up flesh. Mary conceived by the Spirit, that we could look to Jesus, the God-man, and know God from Him. But an idol wouldn't work. Jesus is uncreated. Takes up flesh, losing nothing of His deity, so that He's the one being with two natures. Very God, very man. Behold your God. But that's not so with the idols, other religions, or nations. So all of this comes to verses 21 to 24. God's creator, supreme. So He's not an idol. And this is where we get to international politics. This takes us right back to Assyria and Babylon and the whole of Old Testament religion, as we'll look at in just a moment. Maybe we could look at that first and illustrate it. 1 Samuel chapter 5, one of the more famous passages in the Old Testament. Do you remember this passage? If you've read through, you're reading through the Bible maybe every year is a great task because you get these kinds of records again and again. 1 Samuel chapter 5, I'll read just the first 5 verses. They get us all that we need to make the point here. This is, again, for early on, this is before David, before the kingship's established. This is after the judges. Saul's not yet on the rise to anoint, to be anointed by Samuel. So we're right here, 1 Samuel chapter 5. The Philistines captured the ark of God. Remember, it had been traveling with them. And they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod, brought it to the temple of Dagon, and placed it next to his statue. So they take the ark, bring it, they've captured it, they place it next to Dagon. When the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, there was Dagon, their god. So it's a people and an idol. It's a nation and an idol. And Dagon has fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. They took Dagon and returned him to his place. But when they got up early the next morning, verse 4, there was Dagon fallen with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. This time, both Dagon's head and the palms of his hands were broken off, lying on the threshold. Dagon's torso remained. This encapsulates the very idea of nations and idols. A people, an ethnicity in a specific geographic location, and their god. One commentator summarizes it this way: the Philistines captured the ark and brought it to Ashdod, where they set it up in the temple of Dagon, their chief god. In doing so, they probably intended to indicate that Dagon had conquered Yahweh, and that now Yahweh was to worship Dagon. However, when no humans were present, the true power was shown. The statue of Dagon was found prostrated before the ark in a position of adoration, and the next night it was mutilated and defiled. To talk about idolatry in the Old Testament, friends, is to talk about international politics. Those two are two sides of one coin. Those idols begging for the trust, the superstitious inclinations of humanity, right there for them. And here comes Yahweh, here comes God through Isaiah. Come trust me, the one who's uncreated, the uncreated creator. This is your God. So, verses 21 through 24, here's where it all comes to a head. Here's the rhetorical point. If God is the creator, not created, not an idol, which the nations have, which they trust in, which their leaders hope in all their superstitious inclinations, then you can trust your God in any international threat. This is the God who knows you. Notice the text. Verse 23 will be the window through the whole section, verses 12 through 31. Do you not know, verse 21? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not considered from the foundations of the earth? God is enthroned above the circle of the earth. Its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like thin cloth, spreads them out like a tent to live in. Verse 23, here it is. Here is the whole rhetorical point with the comparison of God and idols, the creator and the created, in international conflict. Verse 23, God, our God reduces princes to nothing. He makes the judges of the earth to be irrational. This is why we can trust him. This is why the idols of the nations truly are nothing, because they're created. Our God is the creator. They, in their superstitious inclinations, ascribe to those idols some kind of power, some way that those idols could get them through. And our God says, trust me. Everything you see, I made. We don't have to look far in the Bible, do we, to see that an illustration of verse 23. He reduces princes to nothing. Fascinating time period for Isaiah, isn't it? Because it's Jeremiah who is a prophet in Jerusalem after him. And Jeremiah speaks of God's sovereignty and power. And then Daniel comes to be a prophet in exile. And it's Daniel in exile who deals with Nebuchadnezzar. And you remember in Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar looks out and says over his kingdom, look at all I have made. Do you remember the scene? Look at the beauty of these gardens. There was nothing here when I arrived. Look what I've done. What's the next scene? Nebuchadnezzar's acting like an animal. He's on all fours, eating grass. What does verse 23 say? He reduces princes to nothing, makes the judges of the earth to be irrational. Behold your God. In fact, verse 24, they're barely planted, barely sown. Their stem hardly takes root in the ground. He blows on them, they wither, and a whirlwind carries them away like stubble. There's nothing left. Behold your God. Bucket A, nature. Bucket B, God. 15 question marks. Come trust me. I'm not an idol. I created everything that they make idols out of. Those idols that represent their nation, you are my people. Come trust me. Verses 12 through 17, creation displays God's wisdom. Therefore, he's not an idol, verses 18 through 20. In fact, verses 21 through 24, that means that he's over nations. He's over idols. He's supra any nation. In fact, verses 25 to 26, we've come full circle. Creation displays God's wisdom. Who will you compare me to? Verse 25. And this is it's almost funny in the language. If you read it slowly, if we're really thoughtful in our reading, it's almost funny how many times Isaiah speaks about God with the terms of comparison. It's a non-starter. It's an oxymoron. God can't be compared to something. That's the point. Who are you going to compare me with? Stop asking a question that I can't answer, because you can't compare him to anything. God's always in his own category. That's what it means that he's holy. Who are you going to compare me with? Who's my equal? And verse 25 bears it out. Says the Holy One. It's like the color black asking people, why are you calling me dark? Well, I don't know. Who are you going to compare me with, says the Holy One, i.e., you can't. That's what it means to be holy. I'm uncomparable. Again, he's calling creation as the witness first. Look up and see. Look up and you created these things. He brings out their starry host by number. He calls them by name. Because of his great power and strength, not one is missing. There's a sense in which all the natural terminology here must be understood, A, in terms of God and theology, but also in terms of what it means to relate with this God. Derek Kidner synthesizes the ideas we've discussed along the way and what's to come in verses 27 through 31. Verses 27 through 31, some of the most comforting passages of Scripture. This passage of Scripture has led to countless artworks, pictures of eagles in throughout time and history. That eagle is to represent our response, power and strength. Kidner writes it this way: the wrong inference from God's transcendence is that he's too great to care. The right one is that he's too great to fail. There's no point at which things get on top of him. This is funny in our day, isn't it? In terms of even modern politics. This business is too big to fail, so someone have to prop it up. Well, if it's too big to fail, why do we need to prop it up? I mean, isn't that a bit comical? This industry, we've seen this even in our own lifetimes, is too big to fail. Well, if it's too big to fail, why does the government need to prop it up? Why is it failing if it's too big to fail? The point is the consequences would be so devastating. But it's true with our God. Too big to fail. Notice the text. Verse 27. Jacob, the questions now get personal. God addressing his people. Jacob, Israel. My way is hidden from the Lord. My claim is ignored by my God. This is the posture that the people see themselves in. Cast off, ignored. This is how they feel. Hidden. One translation gets it this way: God, don't you know my destiny? It's kind of funny. That's sometimes how we feel. God doesn't know he does know. He's kind of in charge of destinies, actually. Yahweh is the everlasting God, verse 28. You've not been ignored. He's the creator of the whole earth, and he never grows faint or weary. There's no limit to his understanding. Look around. This is God's calling creation there in the courtroom as a basis of calling us to trust him. Look at all of this. I made this. Therefore, I'm not an idol. I'm not like the gods of the nations. Any force that opposes you internationally, I'm not like them. I'm over them. And he doesn't faint or get weary. There's no limit to his understanding. Doesn't this just anticipate? Boy, it just seems to make sense. That if this God, who is eternal, creator over all, wanted to be known to humanity, it just seems to make sense that he would become a man. He would be known in this way. And if he did become a man, even if it looked like he was killed, even if it looked like he died, even if it looked like he was crucified, and that would be the end, doesn't this just anticipate that it wouldn't be the end? Because he's the everlasting God. It almost would necessitate that if this God took up human flesh and died, even if it was a gruesome, public, vicious kind of death, it just couldn't be the end. Because this God is life. Verse 29, he gives strength to the weary, strengthens the powerless. He doesn't faint or become weary. There's no limit to him, verse 28, his understanding. Indeed, youths grow weary. Young men are going to stumble and fall. Verse 31, but those who trust in the Lord, they'll renew their strength. Despite feeling weak, despite being cast off. Again, Derek Kidner, the final reminder of human frailty is forward-looking. It clears the way for trust, the transcending of natural resources. The phrase renew their strength is literally change strength, as one might change clothes. That biblical framework, especially robust in the New Testament. Put off, put on. Put off the old man, put on the new. Put off natural strength, put on divine ability. Those who trust in the Lord, verse 31, they renew their strength. They'll soar on wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint. Oh, brothers and sisters, isn't nature great? Hope you get outside this summer. If you haven't been to the beautiful lake, big lake, just watch that water and be soothed, relax. Look out in a starry sky. Get out of town at night. Sit, just look at that starry sky. No city halo to interrupt what you can see. Perhaps it's the beach or the mountains. God created all of that. As cathartic and healing as it can be on its own, God calls it in court to testify to His greatness and for you and I to trust. Creation is called as an exhibit for God to call us to trust Him. Rely on me. Commit your way to me. I want to set out 3 ideas here to sort of wrap this up for our own context just a bit more, if you've got any room yet on your note sheets. We've been thinking about natural theology in some ways that we might want to apply it in our lives, and even thinking about passages in the New Testament. When we think about the position that Judah found herself in, they felt hidden from the Lord. They felt like cast-offs. The Assyrians rising, the Babylonians rising, they have no strength. What are we going to do? It sounds like the audience that Peter writes to. To the temporary residents of the dispersion, to the elect aliens, to those without a home. And Peter bids the audience to come trust God, trust in Him. And that's so first idea is this, it's confidence. We have reason for confidence in God despite being the category of cast off. Peter's audience felt like cast off, but we have every reason for confidence. Listen to what Peter writes in terms of our confidence. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to His great mercy. He's given us new birth into a living hope. We come to share in God's life in us. That's what it means to be born again. We're born again by the Holy Spirit, by God's Spirit. So it's the living God comes to live inside of us. That's regeneration. That's that doctrine. So there's a liveliness about Christians. It's the life of God in us. And that bids confidence. He's in me. I have a reason to be confident. Living hope, new birth through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, uncorrupted, undefiled, kept in heaven for you. You have every reason to be confident. Second, character of perseverance. Natural theology bids confidence in opposition, and it builds a character of perseverance. I'm just reading right through 1 Peter chapter 1. You who are being protected by God's power through faith for a salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. And you rejoice in this, though now for a short time you've had to be distressed by various trials. Here, a character of perseverance through trials. This is what provides Christianity, I think, a robust defense in every season. It always works. It's not escapism. It's potency for endurance. Confidence, character of perseverance, and third, perhaps an ironic twist, but an important one for us. Natural theology, boy, this is encouraging stuff. Confidence, wonderful. My God reigns over all. Character of perseverance, I sure need that. His living power in me, calling me forward. But here's another idea. It's always going to mean that we are in a contradictory position with the world. Because our God is the holy creator, and we believe that, and that is the last thing the world wants to hear. We are always going to be in a contradictory position in the world. Anything but a holy God who has created the universe and sent His Son as the single testimony to Him in a saving way. Anything but that. As soon as we get to exclusivity from holiness, we are in a contradictory position with the world. This is what helps us, encourages us in the midst of evangelism when we're rejected. Go to try to evangelize, people don't understand. People think we're wrong. Why is it that I always feel like I'm opposed? It's because we believe in the holy God. He's not like other gods. He can't be mixed up. Our world is happy to mix up all kinds of ideas and set them there so long as there's not exclusivity, and that exclusivity is the basis of eternal judgment. As soon as that happens, we're in a contradictory position. But that's true. That's us. We don't believe that everything just happened. We are not Darwinian. We believe in a creator, uncreated, testimony in Jesus Christ. This is exactly what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Where's the wise? Where's the scribe? God has brought the foolishness, the wisdom of the world to nothing. And this is what we believe.